It's September 25th, and we're 39 days from the election. Today is Let's Hear Your Voice Day at Vote for America. We opened our phone line and want to hear from you. Okay, I'll be there in a minute. I'm on the live stream. Today we talk with Lincoln Project pollster Mike Madrid and speak with a man who has learned how to have a civil conversation online. Rare these days. And now, filling in for host Jennifer Horn, Lisa Senecal.
Welcome to Vote for America. I am Lisa Senecal. I am here today filling in for the incomparable Jennifer Horn, who will return with us next Tuesday. We are 39 days from the election. Hard to believe it's getting this close already. We are going to be coming back and spending time with you until the election on November 3rd. And we hope to be bringing you really relevant information on how to vote, where to vote, when you're able to vote, and to help you work through some of those difficult conversations that we're all trying to have with potentially persuadable voters and see if we can bring them over from the dark side and make Donald Trump a one-term president. So you can find us on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube live every time we do this program. And I also want to take a minute now to introduce my co-host for today, Kurt Bardella. He is a journalist, a political commentator, and he is one of the senior advisors with the Lincoln Project. Hi, Kurt.
Oh, well. Hi, Lisa. I'm so glad to be here. It would take two of us to fill the shoes of the incomparable Jennifer Horn.
Yes, indeed it would. Although I'm not going to imply that she has large feet. I'm sure she has very dainty, lovely feet. So one of the things that we hope to accomplish with this show is to be hearing the voices of regular voters out there. And so we want to invite you to really be part of this show. Now that we're only 39 days away from the election, we're trying to find new and better ways to engage you. And so please tweet us with the hashtag Vote for America. And we're now going to have a phone line. We're going to kick it old school, and you're going to be able to actually call us and leave us voicemail messages. We're going to listen to one of those in just a minute, and we're going to bring up a graphic that's going to show you the phone number, so then I can read what's on the screen to you, because there's nothing better than having somebody tell you exactly what you're capable of reading on your own. But maybe that's not going to, so I'm just going to go, there we go. All right. So the phone number, 201-503-4585. Leave us a voicemail. I promise we do not behave the way my sons do, and we're actually going to listen to the voicemails that we receive. You can also send us questions at our Gmail address, questionsvfa@gmail.com. And again, tweet us at hashtag Vote for America. We've had a bunch of submissions already come in. We're going to take a listen to one of those right now.
How do people vote for a president that lies and is not a president for everyone, only a president for some Republicans? We need to get him out of there. What can we do to get Barr and Trump out of office, and including the Republican senators? Thanks.
Kurt, I'm sure Lisa, you have all the answers for that.
There really is one thing, and it's very simple, and it's to vote. That is the last recourse that we have in this fight to protect and preserve our democracy. There is nothing they can do if we all show up and vote. They know, and we know this because of their recent rhetoric and tactics trying to undermine the election, they know that if our numbers show up, if our side shows up the way that it's capable of, there's no chance that they can win. There simply is more of us and less of them. And so one of the things that we talked about last night on LPTV is the motto: we will vote, Trump will lose, and Trump will leave.
Yeah, he will. I think, we've all become accustomed to the lies, but once in a while there's one that kind of shocks us again, which is amazing that we're still able to be shocked by this guy. But hearing him say from the podium that he was not necessarily going to concede the election if he loses and have a peaceful transition of power is a little bit shocking. But when you look back at his statements, he's done this over and over again. He did this in 2016. He said it's going to be a rigged election. It's kind of amazing. It's always a rigged election until he was surprised that he won in 2016, and suddenly it was a completely valid election and there was no voter fraud. And he's setting that up again, and it's because he knows he's behind.
Yeah, well, it's tough to make sense of the unsensible, which is what we try to do every day. But thankfully, partly because it is Friday, and so that means we have a very special guest who joins us on Fridays to help make sense of all of the insanity. And it's our good friend and co-founding member of the Lincoln Project and Republican political strategist, who is an expert in Latino voting trends, the one and only Mike Madrid. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Having me. I love this
Hey,
format,
Mike.
the concept. I think you guys are going to do some great work, and I'm looking forward to talking with you both.
Glad to have you here.
So, Mike, one of the things that stood out to me in the last 24 hours is actually it was a tweet that you put up saying something along the lines of, something had happened and it was your favorite lie that Donald Trump has told, which is quite something because Donald Trump's told like 30,000 lies. I don't know how you picked just one, but I want you to take a look at this and tell me why this was your favorite lie.
The suspense is killing me.
Me too. I don't even remember which lie we're talking
That's for
about.
dramatic effect.
That's what happens when there are this many lies.
Wow, my hearing may not be that good, but it sounds like there's a lot of booing and a chant that says "throw him out." Now, Donald Trump went out there and said, of course, that he didn't really hear what was going on. It was closer to the media, and he couldn't make sense of it. And you called that your favorite lie. Why?
Well, because look, Donald Trump lives in this bubble, right? Like a lot of politicians do, and he thrives off of the energy he gets from his rallies, which he has, of course, put hundreds and thousands of his own supporters in harm's way just because he needs that ego gratification. This has been a tough year for everybody. It's been a particularly tough year for President Trump. I'm not asking for any sympathy for him, but being stuck inside without the adoration of his crowds has had to be tough on the old guy. And look, so he lies about it. He goes out there, he's standing there facing a coffin, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's coffin, and it's not just the intensity of the jeering and the booing from his fellow countrymen in an unscripted, candid atmosphere. It was literally over the coffin of the first woman who will lie in state in our country's history. It's a profound moment for so many reasons. And for him, of course, unable to deal with the reality of how real Americans feel about him, unscripted, candid, in a raw moment, tells us all that we need to know. And boy, guys, I will tell you, if there was ever a time when I wish he was not wearing a mask, it would be this moment because we really would have seen the impact that clearly was having on him. So, we didn't get to see it, but I assure you, while there are only 39 days left, this will not be the last time that something like this happens. There is an incredible intensity in this country to have Donald Trump removed from office. And when there are unscripted raw moments like that, it naturally develops. There's a rage just underneath the surface, and it explodes like that. And I'm glad that he heard it because he's going to get a strong sense of where this country is really at.
It's amazing what happens when you step outside of that Fox News protective bubble and you come across real people who are experiencing the real consequences of this presidency. Mike, one of the things we talked about on last night's show, The Breakdown on LPTV, we talked about how while there aren't that many people that we would categorize as undecided in this election, what we are seeing, in part because of COVID, is the base of Donald Trump, white, uneducated men, moving more towards Joe Biden right now, which is something that I never thought that we would see happen. And I'm not saying that there's an avalanche of support going to Joe Biden that way, but he is losing support in the one place that he cannot afford to do so. What's going on there, and why do you think that's the case?
Well, that's a great question, Kurt, and you're exactly right. I mean, for the first time, really, with very, very few exceptions, we are beginning to see an erosion in Donald Trump's hardest core base of support. That is non-college educated white voters, specifically men, in the Rust Belt states. This is the group, this is the region, this is the battleground states that he has desperately been trying to gather back, give that momentum to, as the COVID situation bottomed out in the late summer. Again, it is only very few times, and this summer was one of them, where we started to see a peeling away of this base vote. A couple things we need to remember about that. The geography of this part of the country, fortunately, for health reasons, has never really been hit by the COVID pandemic. With the exception of parts of
Sure.
Michigan, overall, these areas, the Great Lakes states, and most of the Sun Belt and the Midwest, is just now beginning to feel the onset of the pandemic. And we have noticed, and you've been in a lot of these strategy discussions, Kurt, when we start to see the virus spread and get out of control, literally county by county in certain parts of the country, we have seen a commensurate decline in support for the president. So we've talked a lot about this real iron grip that the president has over the Republican base. It's a very real thing. And with certain demographics, literally it has taken a global pandemic and the deaths of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of our fellow countrymen to actually move support levels down even marginally. And so that's what we're beginning to see. We're seeing states like Pennsylvania widen up. We're seeing Ohio come into play. Ohio is a state that nobody really believed was seriously contestable. It was a state that we set aside and said Donald Trump's going to win that. Don't put resources there. There's a lot of other ways to go around to get to the map. Ohio is showing a +4, +5 Biden in a Fox News poll. So, and with Joe Biden at 50% support levels. You're also
Wait,
seeing
what,
states
what
like
poll was that, Mike?
That was the Fox News poll. Yeah, Fox News. Okay, Fox News is saying it. So it's not any of those other bad mainstream media outlets or whatever it's called. This is Fox News. And so but it's not the only one. This is the third one this week that we're seeing this movement in. And as I've counseled people regularly, don't take any one data point or any one poll, even if it is a Fox News poll. Set it aside and make sure that you are looking at the overall trend. And when you hit 3, which we have, you're starting to see real movement. And that's what we're beginning to see is an erosion even amongst Donald Trump's base. My sense is it's probably directly correlates to the COVID outbreak, which is unfortunately hitting that part of the country because of the mismanagement of the pandemic. But it's also clearly part of this cascading effect where a Trump fatigue syndrome is setting in. It's just a real thing.
Yeah, you know what they say: one is a fluke, 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a pattern, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Before we bring Lisa into this conversation, I wanted to ask you specifically about Joe Biden's support with the Latino community. There's been a lot written recently that he's not performing as well as expected, that there is uncertainty about how, whether it's Latinos, Cuban Americans, Hispanics, how they're going to be voting in this election, and that Donald Trump is somehow not doing as badly as you might think on the surface. What's going on there, and how do you see that playing out and the impact, especially in Florida, the most pivotal states in this election? What needs to happen, and how is that going to ultimately play out in this election?
Look, it's a great question, and it's a real issue that is going to be part of the 2020 narrative. The Latino vote for the first time this November will surpass the African American vote as the second largest voting bloc in the country. And as it moves and it grows from this small niche voting group into a larger, broader context, you're going to start seeing more diversification, not just regionally, not just ethnically and racially, not just bilingually. There's a whole host and range of a complex set of dynamics that are changing the Latino electorate, and we're seeing that in 2020. The Cuban vote specifically. Now, everybody knows, anybody who's watched politics even in a cursory way knows that the Cuban dynamic in South Florida, this part of the electorate leans more conservative than any other part of the Latino electorate. And Donald Trump has spent more in Miami-Dade County than any other county in the country, which is again, in its own way, it's a peculiar set of dynamics, but it's working. It's paid off. He is getting a cross-generational level of support between first, second, and third generation Cubans, largely by attacking Joe Biden as a socialist. Those numbers are moving, and it has put Florida in a closer, tighter range than most states that we're looking at as battleground states. Coupled with that, you are seeing some movement, largely with Mexican American men under the age of 40, um, who are getting a little Trumpy. They're moving towards Donald Trump. Most prognosticators suggest that it's because they're beginning to act and take on the characteristics, assimilative characteristics of their other non-college white cohorts. Right. This is Trump's base that we were just talking about. So again, sorry to get too into the weeds on this stuff, but the bottom line is there are some legitimate reasons as to why Trump is coalescing a little bit more support. It's not overwhelming, but it is a little bit of more marginal support, and it is going to have an effect on the race. The good news for Joe Biden is he's winning commandingly with all other white cohorts. And of course, he's dominating with the African American vote. So while it seems like a little bit of an anomaly at this point, and it is a historical, I don't think it's going to necessarily change or affect the overall trajectory of the race.
I think I'm going to nickname you the professor. Professor Mike Madrid on Friday is joining us. Lisa's got a question for you, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, I caution people, and I know you both do too, about not focusing on the polls too much, because we certainly, even if we start seeing things wildly trending toward Joe Biden, we want everybody behaving as though he's 20 points down, because we've got to have huge turnout. But Trump is he's trying to play both sides against the middle. He wants to be able to say that this is a rigged election, that it's not going to have a fair outcome. But if we get to November 3rd or the morning of the 4th, and Trump is looking like in some of those swing states he's ahead because the mail-in ballots haven't been tallied up yet, that is going to look completely counter to what the polling would be showing. So as the days go on and those ballots get counted, we should see the results get closer and closer to what the polls have been showing. So he's not only going to have to be arguing that the ballots, are fraudulent and, it's been a rigged election, but he has to try to convince everybody that the polls are completely wrong when the vote seems to match pretty closely. So how do you think he begins to explain that, or is it just a series of lies?
Well, he's already begun to do that, right? He's already started that process of undermining confidence in our electoral process, which is really central to the entire strategy. Moreover, look, this is one of the conspiracy theories that Donald Trump began literally from the days that he was first elected. And whether it was his own ego that couldn't help come to terms with the fact that he lost by the largest popular vote margin ever, or some other nefarious reasons, he immediately began to blame California and illegal votes. And we know what he was talking about. He was trying to suggest that undocumented residents in California somehow in the millions showed up to vote against him, or somehow undermine the electoral process. I mean, absurd, but it is a conspiracy theory he has played out for many, many years. And so this is all part of a broader narrative. Again, the goal here literally is to undermine confidence in the electoral process. And we're already seeing in public opinion polls, these numbers show up where wide swaths of Americans, I mean, not small, not a majority, but substantial numbers of Americans already do not believe that we are going to have a free and fair election. This has been the goal all along. And so you very correctly articulated exactly what the process is going to look like. Donald Trump will be at his strongest level of supports on the morning of November the 4th. And every day that more votes are counted by mail, processing of all of these absentee ballots and mail-in ballots, he will erode his support levels. The gap will close, and Biden's going to pick up hundreds and hundreds of thousands of votes. He knows that. Donald Trump knows that. His campaign knows that. Everybody knows that. It's like, it's not a secret, okay? This is just math. It's basic demography. And so when it does happen, he's going to have some rationale or some excuse to allow his bruised ego to handle what is likely to be a considerable defeat. And the way he's going to do that is by saying it couldn't have happened honestly. It's happened by the election being stolen from me. Because how could people
Right.
not vote for Donald Trump? And that is the goal. That is the objective. And the unfortunate reality is he's not starting now. He's making it more clear now, because if the dog whistle isn't loud enough, he's got to pull out a bullhorn and say, there is not going to be a fair election in the United States. That's what he's saying at that press conference. It's not going to be a fair election. And he's only saying that because, just like in 2016, as you said, he's convinced he's going to lose. And so this narrative has been going on literally since the 2016 election cycle, and we are just now hearing it again in full high def, color 3D television.
Final question, Mike, before we let you go. A lot's going to happen between now and next Friday when you join us again. And I'm curious, as we encounter the first presidential debate going on Tuesday night, what are you going to be looking for? What's a win for Biden? What does Donald Trump have to do to try to show that he's got some viability going forward and can reverse the downward trend? How successful will the Trump campaign be at trying to manage expectations? Because to this point, they've gone everywhere from that Joe Biden is an old man who can't keep a sentence straight to he's a strong debater. He's going to over exceed expectations. What's going to happen here in the next 7 days as we come into debate time?
Yeah, and they've also been saying he's a mastermind of the left who's trying to, quietly, bring in socialist and communist elements. So, it's a lot for one man to be able to do, to both be, old and senile, a global mastermind of the international left, and be a master, on the debate stage. So Joe Biden's got a lot to cover in this territory if you're from the Trump campaign's perspective. But look, let me put it really simply. There's a couple things that each have to do, and there's some strengths and weaknesses here. First, if I'm Joe Biden, attack, 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 and attack. Prosecute the case. Go directly at this guy. And as Stuart Stevens, our good friend and senior advisor at the Lincoln Project, says, he ought to just literally start the debate by saying, I'm standing next to the most failed president in the history of the United States and is responsible for the death of 200,000 Americans. Start that out and set the tone very aggressively and put the onus and the burden undeniably on Donald Trump. Begin there, set the debate stage, and let him climb out of that. Of course, that's going to make Donald Trump light his hair on fire, and there's a lot of kindling up there to kind of make it set up in a way that will, last probably the entire debate. So let's, stick with that for a moment. But look, this format also doesn't bode well for Donald Trump, right? He needs an audience. He's P.T. Barnum. He needs to feed off the audience and the stagecraft of, menacingly, standing up behind Hillary Clinton, walking around curiously on the stage, making a spectacle of himself. That doesn't work in an audience of 3. If it's just Chris Wallace, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, he's demonstrated time and time again that when it's just him and an interviewer, he does not bode well. I mean, that's been some of the best Lincoln Project ads that we've put out. We're simply cutting and pasting his live interviews and then sticking a paid for by the Lincoln Project at the end and airing the damn thing, and they go viral. So it's not, I don't want to, this is all about expectations. Debates are all about expectations. And now that I say that, I'm going to add one caveat at the end here. The truth of the matter is, this is the most highly stratified and partisan race in the history of modern American polling. There is very little likelihood that no matter who performs well or who performs better or worse, that it's going to change public opinion 1 or 2 points at the most. And even if it does move in that tight range, it will probably come back into the normal range within 48 to 72 hours. So everybody who's watching, 99% of them are already going to have made up their minds. Not a lot of undecided voters will be gleaning too much information. It's just not the way that voters gather information anymore. There will be some.
Yeah.
And if there is some sort of massive knockout punch or some sort of enormous gaffe, you will probably see some movement in the polls. But like I said, it will be fleeting and it won't last that long. So.
All right, Mike, thank you very much for taking some time on your Friday to join us. It's always enlightening to hear your observations. And I guess we'll see in 7 days how right you were about your debate forecast here.
If I was wrong, I won't come back. Yeah. I'll just disappear with the Bears in the background. Yeah. Guys, thanks.
Have a good one, my friend.
We'll blame it on the Bears.
Yeah. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, so we'll just we'll blame it on the Bears if we don't see him again. But boy, that expectations game, it's been a dangerous one for the Trump campaign to play. I mean, they had expectations earlier for Biden in the toilet, and they ended up creating a situation where if the guy could string a 5-word sentence together, he was exceeding expectations. And I'm not sure that the campaign professionals working on the Trump campaign really understood what they were doing.
Yeah, I personally would love it if Joe Biden opened the debate by just saying, what was it, man, woman, camera, girl, whatever that whole 5-word thing was. I just think that would be hilarious. But we will see what happens next. But I always love hearing from Mike. I just think he's just one of the sharpest, smartest guys in all of politics, no matter what party you're from. And so I always just find him such a great and interesting person to talk to.
Yep, he's a brilliant guy. We're very lucky that he's going to be a regular for us on Fridays. And that is a regular for us on Vote for America. We are very pleased to have all of you joining us again today. We are going to be with you from now until November 3rd, and having that conversation, which we really want to have be a two-way conversation. That is what is going to make this program valuable for us, and we hope valuable for you. We need to hear what's working for you, what isn't working, what information you need. And we are going to have a question of the day today, because it is Let's Hear Your Voice Day. So the question is, what was your absolute rock bottom moment with Donald Trump when you decided there was just no way in hell you could possibly cast a vote for this guy? So I know there are a lot to choose from, but we would love to have you send, you can even send us your top 3, because, it's like picking your favorite kid.
Just one?
Yeah, how do you choose one? I mean, I was amazed that Mike was able to pick his favorite lie, because there have just been some phenomenal whoppers that, when you got 30,000 to choose from, it's not easy. So please do tweet us at Vote for America, use a Gmail address, send us screenshots. We are eager to hear from you. We're going to take a quick break right now and see a couple of videos that are the latest from the pirate ship that is the Lincoln Project.
Today, with this proclamation, we're reminding our fellow citizens that our Hispanic heritage is something of which all Americans can be proud.
As president, I'll have a lot of reasons to help Hispanics everywhere, because I'll not only be answering to my grandchildren, I'll be answering to history.
I am proud that we have succeeded in appointing more Hispanics to the federal bench than any administration in history.
We can all learn from the strength, solidarity, and values of Latinos.
That's how we've always made this country great, not by building walls, but by tearing down barriers to opportunity.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
This man is not like the presidents we knew and trusted. Instead of respect, we get insults.
These aren't people. These are animals.
Instead of inclusion, we get excluded.
It's an invasion.
Instead of compassion, we get disdain.
You can't. There's no...
This man is not making America great again, especially for Latinos, because the president considers us second-class citizens.
It's an invasion.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
If you're voting by mail, make sure it goes into the proper envelope. If you're voting in this administration, make a list of the top 10 people you know who might f up putting the ballot into the right envelope, and make sure that they do not. Make sure it goes into the right envelope. You know,
So
look to
wait
your
a minute,
left,
Steve.
your right.
I think,
Call your parents, call your sister. Make sure it goes in the right envelope.
So that should be the next Lincoln Project postcard, right? We're going to send Lincoln Project postcards out that say, when you vote by mail, do not f up. Paid for by the Lincoln Project.
It's very on brand. It's very, very on brand.
Welcome back to Vote for America. I am not Jennifer Horn, as that graphic showed. My name is Lisa Senecal. We are going to have Jennifer back with us on Tuesday. The first spot that we just watched with the presidents of the past is really a great segue into speaking with our next guest, because they really did, by comparison, represent dignity and the ability to have civil discourse. So I want to welcome Chase Mcgowan. So thrilled to have Chase with us today. Chase is an activist and a writer, and he did the shockingly uncommon thing of conducting the social experiment where he actually communicated with people on social media in a respectful and civil way, and seemed to get some good results from it. Chase, tell us about what your experiment showed you.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me. I, like many people, have leaned into some of those angrier, more reactive moments on social media, where the point of the communication wasn't so much the message, but the bite or the wittiest comment, and it didn't do me any favors. It didn't make me feel any better, and it really limited the ability to have profound communication with people. So I took a break from Facebook, and when I came back, if someone posted something that I knew was either patently false or just offensive or divisive, there's so much more ability to move forward if you reach out to them privately and initiate a dialogue instead of a one-upsmanship of wit, of bite. And it was tough, and it took a little bit of learning and a little bit of humility to get there. But even though I don't know how to measure who's going to change their vote or their philosophy, it feels more powerful and effective to approach the people with whom you disagree vehemently with a level of respect and compassion.
Well, I really appreciate that. You returned to Facebook with a lengthy post, and I think we have a graphic of that. We wanted to highlight a little bit of what it was that you said in that original post of yours. Let's see if we can bring that up. So I will go ahead and read your words for you. When possible, and I say this more to myself than anyone reading this, practice compassion. Forget for 1 second who voted for whom. In public, be calm and sensible. And I've got a little bit of my screen blocked, so I will let you complete the end of that.
I think, and I'm sorry, it's a little bit blocked for me too, but the point being,
okay.
I think this was also addressing the pandemic too, and just reach out to people. We shouldn't extend compassion to people, especially right now, simply based on their political affiliation. I think that was just kind of the ending point of that message.
So you have been a Republican voter in the past and grew up in a conservative family. So I'm sure you've had some of those challenging conversations with people you care deeply about. It's a good place to practice for what you're trying to do on social media. Can you share a little bit with us the actual tactics that you've used? Because there's so many people right now who are trying to figure out how to bridge that and begin to have these conversations.
Sure. I'm thankful to have grown up in a more conservative part in Oklahoma, because now that I live in California, I've lived in two political and social extremes. And so I've learned firsthand, just by my relationships with people, that you can't minimize people simply to their politics. Coming out of the closet, I received support from people with whom I disagreed politically, socially, spiritually. It wasn't just Democrats and liberals embraced me and Republicans and conservatives judged me. I was welcomed with open arms. And I've also certainly had more heated discussions that weren't as productive with my family and friends. And it was the point that really illustrated this for me was when I came out of the closet. I had earned a little bit of anger just from growing up being bullied, but if I had taken that and immediately given people an ultimatum and said, you accept me now on these terms and immediately, there's no room for growth. There's no room to learn and to really listen to people's viewpoints. And it's not always easy. And I certainly understand, especially with everything at stake right now, people wanting to be angry and people wanting to react strongly, but just a little bit of patience, you have a much more better opportunity to get through to someone and you'll feel better about it. Anytime I did in the past post something that was snarky or insulting or condescending, minutes, hours after posting it, I didn't feel good about it. And so it does take a little bit of conviction and patience, but with my friends and family approaching the topics of politics and how this election does affect me personally, that same approach that I used to come out of the closet has served me better. And again, it may not immediately change anyone's perspective, but you have a much better chance treating them as humans as opposed to whatever their political party is.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful point. Social media has allowed us to really strip away people's humanity. It gives us that little bit of distance. At the same time, we feel like we know people better because we have a window into their world. And at the same time, we really don't know these people we're encountering on social media at all. So I appreciate so much the idea that you can reach out to another person's humanity by sharing a piece of yourself and being honest and vulnerable.
We can't take hundreds of millions of people and simply think that they all have the same experience, the same perspective. You don't know how someone was raised. You don't know what they've struggled with in their own lives. You don't know their level of mental health. And again, as I said in that post, I say this as much to myself as anybody else. I understand the anger. I understand the anger about the environment, about Black lives, about everything on the table right now. And it is powerful and it is important to speak up and use your voice. What I've learned is there are ways to use that voice and to take that anger, take that outrage, and just for your own well-being, express it in a way that is far more loving and therefore effective.
Yeah, Chase, it kind of makes me think of one of my favorite songs of all time is by Tim McGraw called "Humble and Kind." We all would be better served kind of looking at our own selves and trying to project our best selves, which social media is such a dumpster fire of our innermost thoughts without any filter, reacting emotionally and immediately. And I feel like it's something that's gotten so much worse in the last 4 years. Certainly, I mean, we have, for better or worse, a president whose primary vehicle of communication is social media and Twitter, and that's changed so much about how all of us experience politics and how we talk about politics, and particularly when you have a president who seems to enjoy name calling and being very harsh and judgmental. So I'm curious, imagining a life after Trump, whether it's now or 4 years, whenever that might happen, what do you hope happens with our tone and tenor and how we discuss politics and the overall political discourse in the national conversation in a world that is after and beyond Donald Trump?
I love that question. I think it's easy to castigate Trump and lay all the blame at his feet in terms of how divided we are, but we do have a hand in it. Social media does. There's a certain prize in the number of likes you can accrue or retweets, and I hope that the pandemic, to me, in March, was such a great opportunity for the nation to use a circumstance that affected everybody. And I feel like we dropped that ball and used it as a further divide. So I hope we don't have to learn too many more painful lessons about the destruction that comes when we lose the art of just conversing with people. And if Trump wins or loses, though those are two totally different outcomes in terms of stakes, we simply have to find a way to disagree, recognizing that the hundreds of millions of people in this country, they're not all the extremes that we paint with such broad brushes. And my hope is that we rely a little less on social media, we become a little less reactive, and take the things that frustrate us, that might cause us to feel a sense of outrage, and find something productive to do with it. The difference between fuming over a tweet or joining a grassroots campaign, finding something you can do, even if it feels small, those small steps are what lead to bigger steps. And I would just encourage people to find ways to be present, to not let their beliefs, their self-worth, or their reactions be based on a system, social media, that is designed for people to put a certain, almost humanless foot forward. And I think that comes from conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Chase, it's been such a pleasure to have you on today. It's wonderful to have someone who's setting such a good example for all of us. Spend some time teaching us how we might do things a little bit differently. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you both for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I'm going to put out a nice tweet today for the first time in like 2 years.
Good. I'm going to follow. I've got to practice what I preach. I hear you.
Thank you again. Now our next project is Rick Wilson. We're going to see if we can get Rick to be sweet for a whole day. We're going to hold his feet to the fire and get nothing but strawberries and champagne out of.
Talk about Mission Impossible! My God.
Yeah. We need to challenge ourselves. And we're going to challenge all of our viewers. We want you to take inspiration from what Chase was just describing he had done and conduct a social experiment of your own. We all spend a lot of time on social media, and we can take a page from what we just heard described. So we would love to see how that works out for you. We have a feeling there's going to be a lot more positive than we might expect. So please conduct that social experiment and send us the results. Do some screen grabs, send us some tweets, use the hashtag Vote for America, and please feel free to send those screen grabs to our Gmail address, and we will try to highlight some of those on one of our future shows, and we'll also hopefully have a couple of folks on to talk to us about what their experience was. So if you'd like a shot at joining us here, we would love to have you. So please do go ahead and conduct that experiment, and we'll look forward to the results. We have a couple more Lincoln Project recent greatest hits, so we're going to take a minute to take a look at those.
Hi, my name's Greg, and I was a restaurant manager, and this pandemic has been terrible. It's just devastated the restaurant and entertainment industry. I was furloughed, not making any money, just furloughed for 6 months. Donald Trump for sure knew about this virus, knew it was dangerous. If we as a country, if he would have taken charge of this, he knew how dangerous it was. All he had to do was get in front of America and say, we need to wear masks. Restaurants would still be doing well. I wouldn't have missed a paycheck. Just, we've got to get rid of Trump. He is bad news for America. Thank you.
Wow, I've seen that a couple of times now. I get choked up every time I see it. The amount of pain that has been caused by the mismanagement under this president is really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's easy to forget sometimes as we kind of get caught up in what we always call the blood sport of politics. But what's going on in this country every day is having very real human, real life impact and consequences that people are struggling. I mean, there are so many people in this country right now who don't know how they're going to pay their rent, meet ends meet, keep their children safe, keep their health care, just keep the roof over their head. The things that I think a lot of us, take for granted day in and day out, and so much of that right now is in jeopardy, and the future is so uncertain. It's a good reminder, a kind of a perspective check that the fight that we're in right now, at least from our perspective, is a just fight. It is the right fight, and it's one to really try to make an impact in people's lives. I think all of us who come to Washington and get involved in politics do so in the beginning, at least, to really try to make a difference, just make the world a tiny bit better than the one that we have right now. And this is the first campaign that I've ever been a part of where I feel like this will have such a tangible, hands-on impact in people's day-to-day lives. And it's a real privilege to be in a position to be a part of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we know that it was just a razor thin margin in 2016, and things could have been so different. So if anyone questioned whether or not there is power in an individual vote, we saw in 2016 that there's incredible power, and we missed the target by not that much. But everybody can do their part this time, and they can get out there and vote themselves, whether you're voting by mail, you're voting in person, you're voting early, you're voting on election day. Just get yourself to the polls or mail in that ballot. If you haven't heard about naked ballots yet, make sure you educate yourself some on that. You've got to make sure that you are sending your mail-in ballots back properly, so your vote's going to be counted. But every one of us, we can really make a difference. And you're absolutely right, Kurt, that this is it's an opportunity to change the course of our country. And in 39 days, we get to do that. We like to try to end on a positive note on our program. So, Kurt, I want to tell you about an organization that I just recently learned about that I just love this. It's called Vote Like a Mother. And I like the name for a couple of obvious reasons. I find it a little irreverent, and I could finish the sentence, but I won't do that at lunchtime. But I'm also a mother, and so it really resonated with me. And the organization calls us to look at voting through a parental lens, both kind of the world we want to create for our children, but also with that ferocity that mothers have in them. And right now, we need to be protecting the nation like it's our child. And so check out Vote Like a Mother. I think you'll find it really interesting.
Oh, I love that. And it's so true that this is about protecting things, and so I'm going to piggyback on yours, because there's one thing too that I'm such a fan of, and it's about protecting the world that we live in and the planet that we inhabit. I'd love everyone to check out a platform called ourdailyplanet.com, and there's actually today a great conversation they had with Rick Wilson talking about protecting our planet and climate change, and interestingly, how to talk to Republicans about climate change and invite them to be part of the conversation, invite them to be part of the solution. And I think that our last guest was right about how we have to talk to one another. If we want to solve things, we can't just talk to people we agree with. That's not going to get us anywhere. We need to be better about reaching out and trying to have honest, sincere, and I think accessible conversations with people that might come from a different perspective than us, but at least are open to having a dialogue with us. And so, ourdailyplanet.com, and I'm definitely going to check out, is it Vote Like a Mother?
Yep.
Vote. I love that name. That's so great.
Yeah, it's a pretty great name. Well, thank you, Kurt. It has been wonderful having you on the program today. I thank you for being here. I also want to thank both of our guests, Mike Madrid. We're going to see him back here every Friday to be one of our standard gurus, and also to Chase Mcgowan. That was just a really phenomenal interview, and I so appreciate him. So thank you all very much for joining us today. This is Vote for America. You can tweet us at hashtag Vote for America. We are going to be with you from now until November 3rd. Please continue to check us out. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and obviously you can stream us after the fact. Thanks so much for joining us, and we are going to see you next Tuesday with Jennifer Horn back in the main hot seat. So thanks a lot.